gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to commence our sound check procedure as this is a hybrid live and virtual event that we're having tonight. So, Eric, I'm going to get you to take it away in our control room.
Okay, thank you, Dan. And if we panelists doing a quick sound check live over the bridge. Councillor Whitehead.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to City Hall, where a Ward 8 community meeting on the 2014 city budget is about to commence. So you are welcome to watch live here on joeycoleman.ca, or you can call in to participate in the town hall by calling this following number. If you have to write it down, the number is 866-277-5679.
And participate in tonight's discussion. At that point in time, I will introduce the councillor and panel to allow for any opening remarks of the discussion. Shortly afterwards, there will be opportunities to ask questions and get involved. During this live event, we do ask you to please keep any whispers to a minimum. Our microphones are very sensitive. Also, please take a moment now to mute your cell phones. Thank you very much.
A short countdown, and then we're going to begin live. You 100% ready? Three, two, one.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special Ward 8 virtual town hall budget consultation. We are live this evening from City Hall with Ward 8 City Councillor Terry Whitehead, along with thousands of residents of Ward 8 listening in at home. We also want to thank the Ward 8 constituents who are joining us live tonight at City Hall for this discussion. You can ask Councillor Terry Whitehead a question live this evening at any time. For those listening in virtually at home, you can join our question queue by simply pressing 3 on your phone's keypad. For those live in person at City Hall, we will invite you down to the microphone at the front when we start taking questions live. Since we literally have thousands of people participating tonight, we want you to try and keep your questions brief so we can get to as many questions as we can this evening. And once again, for those joining us at home, press 3 to enter a virtual lineup to ask a question. And for residents joining us live at City Hall, there is a microphone down at the front, and we will invite you to come up to the line and ask that question shortly. My name's Eric, and I'll be the moderator of this historic virtual town hall meeting this evening. Councillor Terry Whitehead wanted to make this historic event the most open and accessible meeting that has ever taken place in Ward 8. This live virtual town hall is also being streamed live at www.joeycoleman.ca. We encourage you all to get involved and ask questions and give your opinion and feedback by voting on a few of our questions. The live audience has been given a sheet of polling questions to fill out, and our virtual audience will be able to vote live using their phone's keypad throughout the event on our polling questions. Councillor Whitehead chose this format as this is a truly interactive town hall with the residents of Ward 8 live in person, over the telephone and internet. Councillor Whitehead wants to hear from you. He wants to hear your opinions and have an open dialogue about budget and issues within the ward and the city. You can ask questions at any time by pressing 3 on your phone's keypad. At that time, someone will take your name and place you in the question queue. Now, hello everyone. Welcome to this very special Ward 8 virtual town hall budget consultation. We are live this evening from City Hall with Ward 8 City Councillor Terry Whitehead, along with thousands of residents of Ward 8 listening in at home. We want to remind everyone joining us so far that you can ask Councillor Whitehead and his panelists, City Manager Chris Murray and General Manager of Finance and Corporate Services Mike Zagaric, a question at any time by pressing 3 on your phone's keypad if you're listening in at home, or by joining the queue to ask a live question here at City Hall. At this time, I'd like to introduce Councillor Whitehead so we can open up the town hall and start taking questions. Councillor Whitehead, welcome. I'm really excited to be a part of the town hall this evening. It looks like we already have a large number of people joining us, and I'm looking forward to the discussion, so please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Eric. I really appreciate it. I want to thank the audience and those listening on from the comfort of their homes. Engagement and citizen engagement is so important to me, and we're looking at different ways to ensure that people get involved with the civic process. The last number of years, I've hosted annual budget meetings at Nash Auditorium. Many of you would remember, and the average crowd was between 100, 120 people would attend. We actually, in one year, videotaped the comments and provided DVDs to each and every councillor for their consideration as we embarked on the budget process. As technology moves forward, so do we. And here was an opportunity to do something new, exciting, and innovative in engaging the broader community in large numbers in the budget process. So for the first time in Ward 8, we have 3 mediums being utilized. That's the live audience that's here in attendance tonight. Thank you very much for coming. We have the live stream that's going into every home. And we have the phone calls and those that are listening. So once again, thank you very much. This is a time that we utilize technology to surely and truly engage the broader community in the budget process. This discussion this evening will be around the 2014 budget. Before turning over to Chris and Mike to speak in more detail about the budget and the organization, how we are doing, I wanted to share with those listening and here in the room how Hamilton is doing. For example, 5-year tax average equals 1.5%. We are the lowest in terms of tax impact over this term of council in the Golden Horseshoe at 1.2%, and the 3rd lowest in Ontario. Unemployment rates, Hamilton is one of the best in regards to performance in the employment rates. On the charts I have before me, we're looking at Hamilton currently at 7%, Oshawa at 6.3, St. Catharines Niagara at 8.5, Kitchener at 7.3, London at 7.9, and Windsor at 9.2. According to the Conference Board of Canada's annual statistics, Hamilton ranks number 1 in the country at 0.94, with 1% being a completely diverse economy. So that's a reflection of how diverse our economy is. How do we stack up against the others? Ottawa is 0.37, Calgary's 0.77, Halifax 0.88, Toronto 0.88, and again, Hamilton at 0.94. Overall city highlights. Hamilton's industrial vacancy rate is at an all-time low at 1.3%. and the source for this is Colliers International. Airport Employment Growth District approved by the Ontario Municipal Board just recently. Continued development at the Red Hill Business Park, agriculture and food processing focus. And as you can appreciate, we had the announcement of the Canada Bread and Maple Leaf protein plant, and we have Navistar as well. Is it Navistar? Did I get that right? And then we also, another big accomplishment that's going to hopefully generate not only a higher quality of life and opportunity and amenities for the many residents of Ward 8, but the setting sail is coming to fruition, and we're into the point where that's been approved, and there's going to be many opportunities for certain types of development and investment in our waterfront. I'm quite excited about that completing the process. Building permits is another highlight of this community relative to all the other communities we compete with. In 2012, we had $1.5 billion in assessment in growth building permits. 2010, we had $1.096 billion. So clearly, we are outperforming many of our comparators in the GTA relative to building permits. So that's another highlight I wanted to provide to many of you on the phone as well as here in the audience. So we certainly are not without challenges. Challenges, we have an aging infrastructure. Should be spending around $200 million more per year over a 10-year period. Growing debt forecasts required to meet major infrastructure rehab and expansion projects. 77% of a residential tax base is on the residential, and 23% is on the commercial industrial. Grappling with increased operating costs like salaries, wages, pensions, and utilities, etc. Seniors' population will double in the next 10 years. Healthcare costs are expected to increase accordingly. Obesity remains a major health risk in the City of Hamilton. Poverty statistics are improving, but remain a concern. External demands, elder care, child care are increasing, and certainly mental health. And of course, we had the major significant announcement of the St. Joe's Mental Health Hospital on the West Mountain. So now I'd like to turn it over to Chris Murray to provide some opening comments and then introduce Mike Zagaric, our General Manager of Finance.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whitehead, and just to underscore some of what you just heard. First, I'll tell you that this term of council, we met with each member to find out what their priorities were, and very clearly in 2010, council said to staff that taxes are of critical concern and established for us a very clear target, and that is zero increase in taxes without affecting services. And the fact that over the last 3 years that we've been able to hold taxes down, residential taxes, to 1.2%, which, as the councillor points out, is the lowest in the Golden Horseshoe and the third lowest in the province, is a testament to council's direction to staff. And that's important to say. And this term right now, or this year right now, sorry, the budget has not been approved, but we are at 1.4%. So we are taking, obviously, quite seriously council's direction in terms of trying to keep taxes low. I just want to point out something that the councillor talks about in terms of our overall tax base. 77% of that tax base is coming from residential taxpayers. 23% is coming from the industrial commercial sector. If you go back 30 years, that ratio was more in kind of a 50-50 breakdown. In other words, a lot of companies here were responsible for footing the bill in not just building infrastructure, but maintaining it. And so the fact that everything is shifted towards the residential taxpayer, and as the councillor points out, we have a population that's aging, that's a concern. Now, I can tell you, aside from the fact that from an infrastructure standpoint, that we should be spending on average about $200 million more a year over the next 10 years, maybe some good news is from Queen's Park in terms of growth. There's little doubt that in the next 20, 30 years, a lot of the growth is going to shift towards the Peels, the Haltons, the Hamiltons, and the Niagaras. So the expectation is that our population and employment numbers are going to rise. And so for you in the audience that are here tonight and those that are at home listening, all of us think in terms of our kids and our grandkids, and are they going to be able to find jobs? Are they going to be able to work here in the Golden Horseshoe and support their families, as many of us have or still are? So building that economy is key. And so we need to make some careful investments over the next few years to make sure that the economy keeps moving in the right direction. Our economic development department has had some major investment by council over the last few years, and that has resulted in, I say, a fair bit of success on their behalf, and they are well recognized in the province. So, you know, I'll turn the floor over to Mike now, and Mike can take you through where we are with respect to the budget right now. But I can tell you a lot of that growth that we're enjoying, the councillor should probably have mentioned too, he was chair of the Planning and Economic Development Committee and was instrumental in making sure that you know, we did look at how well we do with small businesses and making sure they're successful, as well as to you know, continue to encourage staff to do as much as possible to build the economy, and that's exactly what the chairman of that particular standing committee does. So and to him, I thank him for his leadership there. So there's lots of things we got to do to continue to make sure that the momentum that you see right across the street and throughout the city continues. It's not enough to be successful today. We have to be successful over the coming decades if we want to make sure that our kids and our grandkids are going to have places to work. But there's really, I think, a lot that is moving in the right direction, and certainly keeping your taxes down are critical. So, Mike, if you could take them through where we are with this year's budget.
Sure. Let me just check. Eric, can you hear me through? I've just moved over to the podium, so I just want to check.
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Great. So I appreciate Councillor Whitehead's and Chris's introduction. They spoke very much to some of the challenges that this community and the City of Hamilton as a corporation are facing, and what you'll see in the presentation I'm about to present is a number of concerted efforts to try to improve the financial sustainability of the municipality. We started off, this is our third budget process, in fact, so in December of 2013, Council deliberated on and approved our water, wastewater, and storm-related budget. The increase in our water, wastewater rates combined was 4.25%. Also in December 2013, Council approved our 2014 capital budget, tax-supported capital budget. That tax-supported capital budget amounted to approximately $288 million in infrastructure funding in 2014. The presentation I'm about to deliver focuses on our tax-supported operating budget, our third budget process. And as Chris has identified, we're in the midst of continuing to present updates to Council. In fact, the audience tonight is getting a bit of a preview to a presentation that staff will be making to committee tomorrow in terms of a most recent update with respect to our 2014 operating budget. We started the budget process off, in fact, we start the budget process off as early as our summer months, so it may seem like a long budget process. Here we are in March, the beginning of March, but nonetheless, staff start preparing our budget forecasts in the summer months, start meeting with the board councillors to go over our capital forecasts, as well as provide some sense of our operating pressures going into the upcoming calendar year. So in December of 2013, we provided Council a outlook with respect to our 2014 operating budget. That outlook identified pressures of about $27.5 million, and you'll see that in the slide if you have access to the slide presentation. So again, in September, we started with a just short of a $28 million pressure, and that represented a residential tax increase of about 2.8%. By November, staff had identified some efficiencies that lowered that levy increase to about $26 million, or again, 2.8% for an average residential impact. By December, we prepared our budget books, and at the time of the printing and delivery of our budget books to Council, we had lowered our levy increase by by just short of $5 million to $21.4 million, and I'll identify a number of initiatives or efforts staff identified in order to arrive at that $21.4 million in an effort to reduce the tax impact to the Hamilton residents. That $21.4 million represented a tax increase, residential tax increase of 1.8%. Tomorrow we'll be presenting to committee our most recent update of a 1.4% residential impact, average residential impact, or about $20.5 million. So in terms of, so just to flip back, in terms of how did we get to $27.5 million of pressure, how did we reduce that to $20.5 million? It's important to identify that as staff deliver and prepare the budget books, we're continuing to look for efficiencies and opportunities to reduce the tax burden for the average residential impact. And what we've done is we've captured a number of savings that have been identified across the various departments, across the organization, in terms of, again, reducing the tax impact. So again, you can see in this slide is that staff identified approximately $4 million in operating efficiencies. That $4 million reduced the tax burden by about 0.5%. So again, leading up to the development of the budget book in December, staff identified that $4 million in an effort to reduce the tax burden. In tomorrow's presentation to Council, I'll be highlighting an additional approximately $630,000 in efficiencies that our senior management team are recommending to Council tomorrow in an effort to reduce that 1.8% to 1.4%. In terms of the change, the 2014 budget incorporates relative to previous budgets. Through the budget process, it's always a challenge for Council to try to balance the need for sustainable services with efforts to try to reduce the tax impact and trying in an effort to try to limit as well our tax burden. In previous years, Council would have considered one-time funding sources as an example to fund a particular program or service level while trying to maintain our competitive tax position. In 2014, while we're trying to continue to protect our taxpayers by maintaining a competitive tax level, we are making some adjustments to our budgeting practice in an effort to provide a more sustainable budget. So again, in 2014, service levels will continue to be delivered at or above levels that were delivered in 2013. In addition, there are a number of opportunities that Council have deliberated on whereby our reliance on reserves would be reduced. For instance, there's a lower reliance on reserves as it relates to our recycling revenues. What we've seen with respect to our recycling revenues is a decline in the revenues in terms of the global market for those products. And so in an effort to provide a more sustainable budget, there's a lower reliance on our recycling reserves of just short of $900,000. In addition, there's a lower reliance on our tax stabilization reserve of approximately $700,000 as it relates to parking revenues that aren't being realized. And as it relates to complement, there's always a concerted effort by Council to try to hold the line on complement. And in 2014, we reported to Council that our complement, our staffing levels are in fact reduced in our 2014 budget relative to 2013 by just short of 59 positions. So again, 59 fewer positions in our 2014 tax-supported budget relative to 2013. In addition, there are some programs where we are not realizing the revenues we have forecast in 2013. And I'll be speaking to Council tomorrow with respect to our 2013 forecast year-end position. So again, in 2014, we've made the effort to try to provide for a more sustainable budget through adjusting those revenue shortfalls, including revenue shortfalls in recreation and licensing. In addition to the revenue shortfalls, we have had pressure with respect to our risk management program. So in terms of risk management, that relates to incidents that occur in our community, whether it's slip and falls on sidewalks or in terms of some claims as it relates to our other infrastructure. In terms of historical pressures in terms of risk management, we've been trending towards about $2.3 million in pressures over and above what we budget for in risk management. In our 2014 budget, we're adjusting for that. We're providing for that fundings in an effort, again, to provide for a sustainable budget. for the corporation and the taxpayers. And with respect to our retiree benefit costs, Council has directed staff, did direct staff to report back in 2013 with respect to our liabilities for retiree benefits. We have liabilities as it relates to our retiree benefits of about $36 million. In 2014, we've started to address those retiree benefits, and we're looking to phase in adjustments to our budget over a 5-year period to fully fund that liability with respect to retiree benefits. So the point of this slide is to identify the fact that our 2014 budget is sustainable. It moves the corporation to a more sustainable position as it relates to budgeting, and what we expect is through these adjustments to a budget process, it'll allow for positive year-end positions, eliminate some of the risks that we see with respect to our year-end positions, including in 2013. In terms of the impact of that 1.4% on an average assessed property of about $275,000, and I think in Ward 8 that represents close to the average value of an assessed property in Ward 8. That 1.4% you can see here represents an increase in taxes of about $50. And again, you can see in the slide here, it's broken down by city departments, 1.6% or $48, boards and agencies, about 0.3% or $10. And boards and agencies, that very much represents increases in Hamilton Police Services costs. Capital, zero. And while the capital increase is zero, I should point out that we are investing about $90 million in our tax-supported operating budget towards capital in 2014, similar to the level of investment Council approved in 2013. So total municipal taxes is increasing by 1.9%, or approximately $58 for an average household. We are seeing some, and this will be information that will be delivered to Council tomorrow, we are seeing some relief with respect to residential education taxes. And we've just received this information from the province just over a week ago. Residential education taxes in the city of Hamilton are coming down 1.3%, or about $8 for an average household. So again, when you look at the total tax burden, property tax burden for an average household, again, 1.4% represents approximately $50. And I think Chris identified the trending with respect to municipal taxes in the city of Hamilton. But it's important to identify as it relates to city departments. While city departments is increasing by 1.6% in 2014, it's actually increasing over this term of council, over this 4-year term of council, by less than zero. In fact, it's decreasing by approximately 0.2% over the 4-year period from 2011 to 2014. So again, in terms of the guideline set by council with respect to sustainable budgets and 0% increases, again, city departments have delivered that over the 4-year term with an average increase of less than 0%. In terms of the various departments and where they are coming in with respect to the 2014 budget, you can see a range of increases. With respect to some of the departments, what you're seeing in, for instance, planning, economic development, the top line on this table, an increase about 9.3%. That is very much focused. That increase is driving some changes or corrections in the budget where that department was not sustainable from a budgeting practice. And again, some of the adjustments I spoke to earlier, lower reliance on reserves and adjusting our revenue forecast to better reflect our actual revenues realized. Those are the driving factors in some of, or in that particular department. And as you scroll down, you'll see different pressures around public works. Winter control continues to be a pressure. We know in 2013, our winter control costs exceeded our budget by approximately $5.6 million in 2013. From a budget perspective, we continue to look at winter control over an average. We try to capture positive years where we haven't expended as much as budgeted with respect to winter control, as well as capturing the years where we've gone over budget. So we take what we refer to as a continuous average. We take our previous actuals and we average those out to set our budget as it relates to winter control. So with respect to winter control, that is a driving factor in our public works budget in 2014. And again, as you work down, you see with respect to Hamilton entertainment facilities, Council made a decision in 2013 to deliver those services through private operators. And in 2014, what you see there is a lower subsidy from the City of Hamilton as it relates to those facilities, a lower subsidy of just greater than $1 million in 2014. That translates into a lower tax burden for the average property holder and taxpayer in the City of Hamilton. So again, city departments expenditures are increasing by an average of 3.6%, or approximately $16.2 million. Again, Hamilton Police Services is increasing by approximately 2.9%. It's rounded there to 3%, or $4.2 million. And you can see our other boards and agencies are coming in at approximately 0 or 0.2%. So overall, again, with respect to city expenditures and boards and agencies, you're seeing increases of 3.6% and 2.3% respectively. You'll see a line there for community emergency services. The province continues to upload our Ontario Works costs, and they've made a commitment, this government, provincial governments made a commitment to upload those expenditures through to 2018. The upload benefit to the City of Hamilton in 2014 as it relates to Ontario Works is about $3.2 million. So we've shown that benefit in terms of that particular department in the table up above, the third line in the table. You see community services is increasing by 0.9%, including that upload. But if you were to control for that $3.2 million benefit or that upload, that department is increasing by 2.3%, or $5.1 million in 2014. In terms of some of the pressures that we're seeing in our 2014 budget, compensation, recognizing that we provide services to taxpayers and corporations and businesses in the City of Hamilton. Compensation is a pressure in 2014 of approximately $9.4 million. In addition, there's a number of infrastructure investments that have been made or approved by Council prior to 2014. From a budget perspective, we don't assume those operating costs of those additional facilities. So in the year that those capital investments are approved. So for instance, if a rec center is approved, a new rec center is approved in 2014 through the budget process, but will not be completed until 2016, we don't assume those operating pressures until 2016, the year that that facility comes online. So in terms of capital projects that were previously approved to 2014, but are coming online in 2014, we're assuming approximately $1.1 million in operating pressures. As I spoke previously, there are a number of adjustments that we are recommending to Council as it relates to our revenues and our reserve contributions in an effort to provide more sustainable reserve balances and to address programs where we are not achieving our forecast revenues. There's a pressure of approximately $2.5 million in an effort to make those adjustments. Risk management, again, I mentioned previously, we have a number of pressures as it relates to risk management that we're seeing on a sustainable basis. However, we aren't budgeting for those appropriately, and those pressures represent approximately $2.3 to $2.5 million. Winter control represents a pressure of approximately $1.3 million. About $500,000 of that $1.3 million is related to a service level improvement. Council approved in 2013 an enhancement whereby the level of service provided in our local roads in our neighborhoods was improved, and that represents a pressure of approximately $500,000. And moving towards, as I mentioned previously, from a budgeting perspective, our continuous average makes up that difference of $1.3 million. So again, for 2014, we're identifying a pressure as it relates to winter control of approximately $1.3 million. And again, it's important to keep in mind that as it relates to 2013, the year that that was just completed, our winter control budget, our winter control costs exceeded budget by approximately $5.6 million. Social housing represents a pressure of approximately $1.1 million. We're seeing some favorable trending as it relates to our mortgage rates around social housing. So that's alleviating approximately $500,000 to $600,000 in our social housing costs. However, social housing is one of those programs that is legislated by the provincial government, and they require benchmarking. So each and every year, the provincial government makes adjustments, inflationary adjustments to social housing, and those adjustments are funded through local taxpayers, and that represents a pressure of approximately $1.1 million. Assessment write-offs continue to be a pressure here at the City of Hamilton. Tomorrow, we'll be presenting our 2013 assessment update to Council, and it impacts our 2014 budget. Our net assessment in 2013, feeding into our 2014 budget, is approximately 0.8%, or approximately $5.6 million. So while our net assessment benefit, the benefit of new houses coming onto our tax roll or new commercial industrial businesses is $5.6 million, if you were to adjust or control the impact of existing property owners, and primarily in our commercial industrial sector, who are appealing their assessments, our assessment would be growing by 1.4%, or an additional $4.8 million greater over and above the $5.6 million, so close to $11 million. So our challenge is that a number of our commercial industrial property owners are appealing their assessment, are doing so successfully, and those appeals are offsetting our assessment benefits here at the City of Hamilton. So our net assessment in 2013 was 0.8%, and we continue to have pressures as it relates to assessment write-offs and rebates. Fuel, we've made some assumptions with respect to fuel, just marginal increases in our unleaded and our diesel, as well as our natural gas. Sorry, with respect to natural gas, you'll see a slight reduction in natural gas, some pressures in electricity. Paramedics overtime, we have some pressures as it relates to the overtime costs of that service, and that's approximately $300,000. There are some favorable revenues as it relates to our Flamborough slots revenues. So here we're showing an increase in our revenues that the City of Hamilton receives through our agreement with OLG as it relates to Flamborough slots. So again, that's providing approximately $800,000 in tax relief to local taxpayers. Some additional revenues from penalty and interest, and finally, as I mentioned previously, our provincial upload benefit of about $3.2 million. So in terms of our pressures, you can see at the bottom is we've highlighted approximately $13.5 million in pressures. Chris mentioned previously that we continue to focus on delivering a competitive tax increase, and again, this will be information that will be delivered for the first time to Council tomorrow. Is for 2014, you can see the City of Hamilton, while we've made all those adjustments in our 2014 budget to deliver a more financially sustainable budget, we've been able to balance those adjustments with a competitive tax increase. So you can see in this table of our comparator municipalities, we are the second lowest, tied with the City of Ottawa with the second lowest proposed tax increase. City of Windsor is at 0% and has been for a number of years for a number of reasons. Councillors, including Councillor Whitehead, has asked staff to review what's occurred in the City of Windsor, and we know that the City of Windsor has made some changes to the levels of service. They've reduced the levels of service in some program areas. They've outsourced some of the delivery of their services, as well as they've received some benefit from the provincial and federal governments, some additional funding transfers from those levels of government. So again, the City of Hamilton is about 1.9%, again, to the low scale of our comparative municipalities, and you can see working across this graph that other municipalities are coming in for the most part at that 2 up to 3.9% in Haldimand, Peel, Mississauga, 3.2. London, approximately 3.2. Toronto's approved at 2.7. Kingston's approved at 2.5. Guelph at 2.4. Halton and Burlington, recognizing that's a two-tier municipality, is 2.2. And Niagara St. Catharines at 2.1. So again, highlighting the fact that the proposed tax increase for 2013 continues to be competitive, and as Chris has identified, has been over this term of council. So that represents the end of my presentation, and I know that Brian McMullen, our acting Director of Financial Planning and Policy, will join me in answering any questions that the audience has of us.
So thank you very much, Mike Zagaric, General Manager of Finance. We also have Brian McMullen with the Finance Policy area, and Gary Moore from Capital. So at this point, I want to thank Mike Zagaric for the presentation. What he didn't say is I believe that the impact on Ward 8, with all the adjustments, is actually, correct me if I'm wrong, 0.9%. Is that correct?
Yeah. So with respect to 2014, including reassessment, as well as the proposed tax increase at 1.4%, and some continuation of area rating of some services, Ward 8 is currently forecast at 0.9% for 2014.
So obviously that's very competitive relative to the graphs that you've seen. At this point, sometimes when you do a budget process, and we can go on and on and on, that's not what the purpose is, because we want to hear from you, the viewers, people in the present, and certainly people online. So at this point in time, I would suggest to Eric that we go to questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Councillor, and of course, thank you to the panelists for that presentation and for their introductions. I want to let everyone know who's joining us that if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so. If you're on the virtual town hall, you can press 3 on your phone's keypad. If you're live at City Hall, you can simply come down to the front and use the microphone to ask a question. So again, we want to encourage everyone to get involved and ask questions. You can ask Councillor Terry Whitehead and the panelists a question live this evening at any time. For those listening in virtually at home, you can join our question queue by simply pressing 3 on your phone's keypad. For those live in City Hall, we will invite you down. We invite you down to the microphone so you can please ask those questions live and in person. Now, we're actually going to go to a polling question for the people joining us live. You were given.
For those of you watching the live stream, if you wish to ask a question by phone, the telephone number to dial is 1-866-277-5679. Again, that number to call in to ask a question, 866-277-5679. People here have just been asked in the poll if they feel that the current snow removal service is adequate. Again, they're in a poll.
Peter, welcome to the town hall. Please go ahead with your question. Yes, hi, Peter. You're joining us live on this virtual town hall. Please go ahead with your question. Hi, Peter. You're live on the line. Please go ahead.
He's talking to you. He's talking to you. You're live on the line. Hello.
Yes, hello. Peter. Hi, please go ahead.
I'm in concurrence with your proposal. But the big question is, I'm concerned about the safety of people in wintertime. And the question remains, Mr. Whitehead has put a blip in the paper which is going to cost $34, or proposing a $34 increase in taxes. That's peanuts, because already I have spent over $250 for cleaning the sidewalks, especially around my area and my driveway. The big thing is, I am partially incapacitated, so I have to pay. But at the same time, if people don't have the solid pharma, they could get hurt and more problems. So have you considered about shoveling the sidewalk clean up and have a very respectable sidewalk where there's no snow or whatever. And would it really cost that much money? I'm willing to propose at least $44 increase in taxes per annum. Would anybody have objections to this? This is my pet peeve. And at the same time, if we're going to have any deluxe services, we will have to increase our taxes respectably. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Peter, for the question. So the question is, and I'm getting this from a lot of seniors, and it is one of our poll questions. Currently, in fact, I just did a neighbor-to-neighbor walk fundraiser, and it was unsatisfactory when we walked the 2 and 5 and 10 kilometers, where there was good pavement and there was a lot of bad pavement. So clearly, we don't have continuity of service relative to the current program. 1 in 3 cities in Canada do not do the pushes the shoveling of sidewalks onto the homeowners. Hamilton is one of them. The balance of the cities do it and take on that responsibility. One of the reasons, of course, is the continuity. So when you're looking at continuity, you're looking at sidewalks that people can safely know that it's done from A to Z and it's safe to walk. The issue has always been, and of course, as a tax fighter, trying to keep the tax at zero, I certainly do not want to be put in a position to impose or push more taxes. So this is one of those issues that is more consensus. We have an aging population. Ward 8 has the highest senior population in the community. We have a lot of people still on fixed incomes. We have individuals with health issues. We get complaints. Snow Angels isn't big enough. And more seniors approaching or calling my office, or more individuals, and saying, why doesn't the city do it? And I'm prepared to pay the $34 per household. That is a polling question, so I would ask everyone on the line, when that opportunity comes, please vote accordingly, and people in the audience. I am understanding these pressures, looking at a pilot program in the Buchanan Park neighborhood, which we will be having a neighborhood meeting very shortly, that's looking at a pilot program that is the utilization of volunteers and the appropriate equipment, a bobcat in a heated shed, that individuals would go out and clear 22 kilometers of sidewalk, which would take that $34 price per household and bring it down to around $2 per household. So clearly a very affordable approach. Whether it's a sustainable approach remains to be seen. That's why it would be a pilot program. So I certainly hear your pain. I understand the challenge for many seniors and those with disabilities, and how in some cases, and I got a question on the same line from Ralph Scott, how contractors are gouging seniors in regards to cleaning the sidewalks in front of their homes, that there's got to be a better way. That is what I'm looking to do, is look at a pilot if we can't get consensus, or at least a majority supporting the $34 per household scenario. So thank you very much, Peter, for your question. At this point, is there any questions from the audience? This is the time to start lining up in front of the podium here, and we can take questions accordingly. So anyone has questions, please come down to the podium, and we'll take your question.
All right, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much, Councillor Whitehead. And as you said, we are taking questions. So far, we've had over 2,500 people join us this evening. If you're live at City Hall, please don't be shy. Come on down and ask a question. And if you're joining us on our virtual town hall, you can ask a question by pressing 3 on your phone's keypad. So again, we are taking questions. Come on down and ask a live question if you're joining us at City Hall, or you can ask a live question by pressing 3 on your phone's keypad. Now we're going to go to a live question from Wojciech. Wojciech, welcome. Please go ahead with your question. Yes, hi, Wojciech. Welcome to this evening's virtual town hall. Please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Wojciech Gutowski. I have a question. I had a couple of questions. One question is regarding this project with the bikes, that you can rent them and return them. And for what I have seen in the other cities, it never worked. So will the taxpayers actually be reliable for any cost for that fiasco, if it is a fiasco?
Thank you, Wojciech, for the question. My understanding is that it's a pilot program. It's been tendered out to a nonprofit organization. It's supposed to be sustainable, and no, the taxpayers are not on the hook, period. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much for that question, Wojciech. And we're going to go to another live question, and this one is going to be at City Hall. Joining us is Sharon. Sharon, welcome to this evening's virtual town hall. Please go ahead.
Terry, when this pilot program begins, and they're going to remove the snow from the sidewalks, where is the snow going to go?
Maybe I'll pass on to Gary Moore. Do you have an answer? Okay. My understanding is that you will have some windrow, just like you do with the snow plows. It will be very little because the snow will be displaced off the sidewalk with a V-type plow in front of it, and would be pushing it onto the banks, whether it's left or on both sides of the plow. So certainly the snow will be distributed as it moves down the pathway.
And another question I have is, I walk a lot in the Ward 8 area. I've fallen 3 times. One has been a house that was sold and the people never moved in till January. So this house was on Stone Church. I have a written report for you that I want to give to you later. Another problem I have is with people who rent homes. Another problem on my street, this home is rented. And the ice right now on it is about 3 inches thick. And I find that rather disgusting. And I don't know whether a renter is responsible for cleaning that snow, the city, the owner, or whoever it is, but I'm fed up with this house.
I appreciate the question. So the question, and this is the point I was making earlier in regards to the unsatisfactory condition of our sidewalks in the winter, when I can go for a walk and only get maybe in front of 2 houses and I'm hitting ice. And so not all households are doing what is expected of them under the bylaw. We do have a program that is proactive, meaning that, reactive, meaning that if there are problem areas, residents need to call the bylaw, City Hall, or even the councillor's office. And what will happen is we will report that to the bylaw officer. They will go up, look at the condition of the sidewalk, and provide a notice to that particular household. So in the case of the renter or the owner's on the hook. If the city has to go and clean the sidewalk, those costs are imposed on the taxes of that particular household. So we recover it one way or the other. But the individuals that see where sidewalks are not being properly maintained, you need to report that so that our bylaw officer can do their job and ensure that those sidewalks are in fact being cleaned.
As the snow keeps coming, the snow removal on the sidewalks is deteriorating because people are fed up. They don't want to do it anymore. So it's getting worse.
Thanks for the question, and I agree. And that's why I think we need to, I think Maclean's Magazine just did an article recently and talked about how cities across Canada see autos and cars as so important and provide a great service in the context of clearing the roads. But yet, some cities like Hamilton, and this is Maclean's Magazine, who say that mobility is important for pedestrians, does not take on the responsibility of ensuring that pedestrians have safe mobility on the sidewalks in the wintertime. So I appreciate your question, and I acknowledge it.
And I must say, the snow removal in my street, I have no complaints on how it was looked after this winter at all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for that question. And we are taking your questions. If you'd like to ask a question live this evening, you can do so. If you're on the virtual bridge, you can press 3 on your phone's keypad. Or if you're at City Hall, you can join us for a live question at the microphone down in front. We're going to go to John for a question. John, welcome. Please go ahead. Hello, John. You're joining us live on the virtual town hall meeting. Please go ahead with your question.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, Terry. I don't know if you can hear me, but anyway, the simple question is it possible in the near future that accountant from outside of the city hall screened every department to see and give us the independent report how good or how bad we are operating. I don't see for last 30, 40 years that I don't recall any decrease in taxes or any balanced budgets. And if private people and citizens can balance their own budgets, City of Hamilton should do that same thing. I can see on the beginning all 3 or 4 guys that were talking, everybody bragging how good they are doing. Well, but the taxpayer might have different opinion about that, because we are not in the same group. We don't have privileges and cozy finances as they are on the disposal of our civil servants. Doesn't matter that is that in municipal, provincial, or federal. All 3 areas are just how can I say, recycling taxpayers' money, and now how good they are, I would like to independent accountant to pinpoint, because we are not qualified. Where can we, when we cannot get the details information how and what was spent, just only what you guys officially tell us, then we cannot have a proper discussion. And also people have to be qualified to get into the details of the finances. By the way, everybody mentioning $1 million there or 20 million there. But you know, guys, we're talking about 1,300 million of dollars that you guys recycling from taxpayers. And I don't want to discuss the other white elephants that we have in the city of Hamilton. Anyway, that's about it.
Thank you, John, for the question. A couple things. One is that we are, and we do, on an annualized basis, have a consolidated audit that takes place with the City of Hamilton. So it's an independent auditor, where it's KPMG, or who is it this year, Michael? Is it KPMG? KPMG, they come in and do audits of the city financial situation every year. You also have Standards & Poor's that come in and do their own audits to determine our credit rating. And over and above those 2 independent audits, I introduced a couple of years ago, which is now in place today, what is called an Auditor General. And that Auditor General's responsibility, in fact, is to go into departments and look where we're getting value for our spending. So now we have an auditor that's specifically challenged to go to every department and ensuring that the money we're spending, we're getting true value for it, and if not, obviously we look for savings. And we're hoping to, not only is that office hopefully going to be paying for itself from the savings, but the taxpayers are going to see the benefit of this particular program. So we've got 3 independent programs that are ensuring that your finances are being spent wisely. I hope that answers your question, John. At this point, Eric, pass back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor, for answering that question, and thank you very much to John for posing it. We're going to go to another survey question. For all the people joining us live at City Hall, you had that piece of paper that you can fill out. But for the people on our virtual town hall, you can use your touch-tone phone to indicate your response. We want to know, would you support up to a $34 increase to your taxes per year to have the city remove snow from your sidewalk? If yes, please press 1. If not, please press 2. And if you're unsure or undecided, please press 3. So would you support up to a $34 increase to your taxes per year to have the city remove snow from your sidewalk? If yes, please press 1. If not, please press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, please press 3. And we're going to go to another live question. And I'll ask everyone to try and stick to one live question or one question during this evening's town hall. We are trying to get through as many as we can. But we are going to go to Nigel for a question. Nigel, welcome to the town hall. Please go ahead.
Now, the last snow we had 3 days ago, there isn't a single sidewalk between Fennel and South Bend being shoveled out. I walked to get a city limousine to come here. We have a bylaw. The bylaw is not working. It's waste of time, taxpayers' money. If you have a son and you tell him not to smoke, make sure you don't smoke first. So therefore, there's far too much money being spent as far as you employ in the city to shovel my sidewalk. No. I want it to be done before 9 o'clock in the morning, not 9 o'clock at night time. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I shovel 6 houses with the seniors on my street. There's no penny come, there's no money exchange. It's considered each other. We're all in the same caliber. We're aging together. Maybe tomorrow I need some assistance. I don't know. As far as the money goes, the removal, not the removal of snow by the house or homeowners, there's a gold mine over there. If you follow the bylaw you imposed and make them pay, you and I wouldn't have to pay any taxes.
So thank you for the question. I know that we met at Westcliff Mall and had the same discussion. So the issue undoubtedly is that there's not enough people clearing their sidewalks in a timely fashion or clearing at all, one. Two, the other issue that you raise is that the bylaw process doesn't appear to be working. And the third piece that you're suggesting is that if we enforce it, we might be able to generate more revenue. Did I capture?
Well, if I park a car somewhere, I get a ticket, I have to pay. Same with this here. There's so many city workers walking around. There's the police, driving. Let them walk for it and see who doesn't shovel the driveway. It's not shoveling the sidewalk. It's the injuries. I heard the other day the city had to pay $20 million or $2 million for injury of people suing the city. That should not happen. There's far too much certain employees for the city scamming the taxpayer.
So,
few days ago, I heard there was one individual, I'm not going to mention the profession, is being suspended with pay. Now, if I work for you guys, which I do, if I screw up and I get suspended, will you pay me? No. This morning I went to work at the crossing guard on West 5th in South Bend. I looked around. I could have phoned and refused to take the children across, but I didn't. So after 9 o'clock, I phoned the city and explained. Whoever was on the other end, she was in a very hurry. I look after it. So to prove a point, I took 5 cents out of my pocket and put it in a certain area on the sidewalk. 3 o'clock, I went back to work. Well, I found my 5 cents. So therefore, they never shoveled the sidewalk. That's how it is. You can talk to you blue in the face. In, out.
Okay, thank you for the question. We want to make sure that we get as many people the opportunity to ask questions, so I'll respond, but if you can allow somebody else to come to the mic. The answer to your questions, first of all, on the pay issue, that's under the Arbitration Act and the Police Services Act. So the Police Services Act, Province of Ontario, they dictate what we can and can't do relative to those issues. So when, for example, an officer gets suspended, he's suspended with pay. And the police board or council has no authority or jurisdiction over that issue. So what we're doing right now through the many organizations, through AMO, through the OCAP, through the chiefs of police, we're lobbying the provincial government to make the appropriate changes so that we can address that issue of suspended officers getting paid for work they're not doing. So that's the first answer. The second one is, yes, we have, especially this year, this has been incredible winter, and I don't think anyone online or here in this audience can attest that they've seen a winter as bad as this one. And certainly the complaints and the amount of sidewalks that are not getting done is much higher this year without question, which means it's putting even a greater load on the very limited capacity we have with the bylaw officers. Is the system working currently with the bylaw officers? No. Do we need to hire more? The problem is it's not sustainable, because you can have a next winter where you wouldn't have any snow and you have all these bylaw officers walking around doing nothing. So you need to have a balanced approach, and the question clearly in my mind is, should the city take over the responsibility of clearing sidewalks so that we don't have to hire as many bylaw officers and we don't have to rely on as many slips and falls and lawsuits affecting the city and the taxpayer. So my position is we need to find a better way to get to those sidewalks, because currently the bylaw system doesn't appear to be working.
Now,
All right, thank you very much, Nigel, for that question. And I also want to remind everyone that if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so by pressing 3 on your phone's keypad if you're listening in through your phone at home. And if you're live in City Hall, you can come down to the microphone and ask a question. But we do ask that everyone try and keep their questions as brief as they can. We have a lot of people that are liking to ask a question this evening, and we want to get through as many as we can. We're now going to go to Maureen. Maureen is joining us live on the virtual town hall. Please go ahead, Maureen, with your question.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I just wanted to make a comment just in follow-up to the reference to the Police Services Board. I am hoping that in some way with you referred to I think it's Association of Municipalities, that they may be looking as an organization to not only look at a specific human resource case, but also look at the fact that the Police Services Board dictates a budget, but the city doesn't have any control over it in a sense. So I know we have members on the police board, but I think the governance structure for the budget is very different from the municipality. So that's a concern to me, because you don't have the same kind of control that the city does for all the city departments. It's treated very differently than a city department. So I hope over time that mechanism between the province and the city can be looked at. I was interested, thank you for the overview of the budget, and this is a great idea to have this virtual town hall. I wanted to ask a bit more about you said 77% of our tax base is residential, and I know you identified that we have $1.5 billion in assessment and growth. I guess my question is, how do we keep trying to go to that? I know Mr. Murray referred to it used to be about 50-50 tax base. How do we keep doing that? What can the city keep doing so that we reduce the dependence on residential tax? Because even though our percentage of tax increase is low, and I appreciate all the work that the city's doing to do that, your individual taxes are really, really high on the West Mountain, for example. So the actual amount I pay is quite high, even though my percentage increase might be not that high. So I'm just wondering how we're trying to increase our commercial base. And I think when we have these requests from healthcare institutions that are hoping to have us chip in on them, that I don't think they create the same kind of taxes, if I'm not mistaken, that a business might do. So I just wondered a little bit about that direction to really try to keep increasing the commercial part of our tax base. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Maureen. I'm going to have Chris Murray pipe in here in a moment. On the police services piece, you're absolutely right. I think we did have a resolution from council to look at a different governance model. One of the examples is if the board and you got old cops that get involved, if they want to make decisions on tax increases as it pertains to the service, as opposed to passing it through this council has no control, perhaps that all the power should be in that governance. The dollars should be passed on to them, and then they're held accountable by the taxpayers for those positions, because unfortunately what happens currently, they pass a budget, Then they bring it to council. We can't go item by item as a council. We have to address it collectively. We can send it back, and then certainly they can take it to OCCP to overrule the council, quite frankly. So it is a challenge. It's a governance that is aged, dated, and needs to change without question. The other piece on the tax, the tax issue, I'm going to pass the assessment piece. I'm going to pass on to Chris Murray.
Thank you very much, Maureen, for your question. First off, Council very clearly gave us direction at the beginning of this term to focus on growing the non-residential tax base. In other words, bring more jobs to the City of Hamilton, and in particular, bring more commercial businesses and industrial businesses. So that really is the cornerstone of how we're going to grow the City of Hamilton, and that has been very clearly directed by Council. So there are a number of players and a number of things that we've been doing over the last few years that set us up for improving our employment situation and improving our tax base. We work very closely with the Hamilton Port Authority. The Hamilton Port Authority oversees a tremendous amount of land down by the harbor. They're responsible for leasing that land out. Their vacancy right now is just over 1%. In other words, there's very little land left because honestly, in the last few years, they've done a pretty good job of marketing their lands to a broad array of businesses, and many of them have located. Now, further to that, Council just recently has been giving us some direction about a brownfield strategy. In other words, industrial lands that are owned by individuals that are underutilized, and Council wants us to look at those lands and see what it is that we can do to maybe revitalize them, turn them into other commercial industrial opportunities. So that's something is not unheard of. I mean, I look overseas to Europe. Scandinavian countries have been tackling their waterfronts for some time with a lot of success, and it doesn't necessarily mean it turned into residential development. The other thing, of course, is our airport lands, which we have, as we indicated in the presentation, we have several hundred acres of lands that are set aside for the non-residential growth. In other words, we are looking to see commercial and possibly industrial activity take place there that is going to further build our tax base. So again, those lands are not being developed for residential purposes. They're being earmarked for employment purposes. And so now that we've cleared one of the hurdles, certainly at the OMB, that's the Ontario Municipal Board, we're in a much better position to see that take off. The other thing that we're doing is down by the waterfront. I mean, those that are familiar with all the work that's gone on over the last decade or more by this council, what you're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years is further development of that area. We're not going to make the mistakes that I would say Toronto made by overdeveloping, basically selling off their waterfront to high-rise condo development. There will be some residential development, but there will be a healthy mix of commercial opportunities down there for people to enjoy. And those lands that we had earmarked for the stadium when we were considering it in West Harbour, those lands are going to go out to the market in the near future, and those too will be developed along the lines of commercial opportunities. So when I look at that and I look at what's happening in the downtown, we have a hotel that's about to open up shortly, addressing one of our big problems with a lack of adequate hotel space, which will support our convention industry here as well. McMaster Innovation Park, certainly we're working with the university there and others to bring innovative business to that park, which will then hopefully result in commercialized opportunities. In other words, businesses that will build up around that area or throughout Hamilton. So there has been a number of companies that have come here. We've talked about Canada Bread. We've talked about Maple Leaf. We still have more lands in the Red Hill Industrial Park that can be utilized for commercial development, and our industrial park out in Ancaster is pretty much full. So it's important to bring on a supply of land that we can use for commercial industrial purposes. And like I say, Council, I think, has been very clear with staff in terms of what it wants us to achieve, and our economic development department has been working to make sure that we retain the businesses we have, and we do everything that we can to attract new business. So it's imperative. I mean, we cannot I think, wait another 10 years to get on top of this, because with an aging population, I worry about those that are going to retire without pensions and the challenges that they're going to face. If we don't have a robust economy, I'd be pretty concerned.
And the last part of that question that Maureen asked was regarding the heads and beds. And one of the big issues with AMO, this council, is that we have, there's a lot of good in regards to the regional expansion of our healthcare system in the city of Hamilton. But the downside is that when you do the assessment on those properties, they're paying $75 per bed. It's called heads and beds. It hasn't been increased since 1987. So we take the load, we take the burden, we take the lost life cycle cost of the roads and everything that they utilize, but they haven't increased 1 cent to this community for the services they utilize in this community. And that's what we are, and AMO are lobbying the provincial government for changes to make sure that communities like Hamilton get treated fairly relative to the heads and beds that hasn't changed since 1987. So thank you very much for the question, Maureen.
Maureen, thank you very much for that question, as the councillor said. And we are going to go to another polling question. But again, we want to remind, so far we've had over 3,200 people joining us live. If you'd like to ask a question, you can do so by pressing 3 on your phone's keypad if you're in the virtual town hall. And if you're live at City Hall, you can join us at the front and ask a question live. So we're going to go to our next polling question, and we want to hear from you using your touch-tone keypad. Would you support an addition of $5 a household dedicated to fixing local residential streets in Ward 8? If yes, please press 1. If not, please press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, please press 3. So would you support an additional $5 per household dedicated to fixing local residential streets in Ward 8? If yes, please press 1. If not, please press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, please press 3. Now we're going to go to another live question from City Hall. Santo, you're joining us live there. Please, will you go ahead with your question?
It is a coincidence that I wanted to talk about paying the $5 extra to fix the roads, and the answer is absolutely. I live on Upper Horning, and the street has been patched up for 14 years now, and it's unpatchable. And the question is, when are we going to fix it? And are we talking about really fixing it or patching it up again? Because it's useless. Now, the other question is, I've been told many years that next year we'll look into it, and I was just wondering when next year will be, because it's forever and ever.
Thank you.
And the other question is, has anybody ever taken a walk up and down Upper Horning? It's a bus route, and it's a disaster. Sometimes I'm afraid to lose my car. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. This is one is near and dear to me. I sat on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities board. It's not a situation that's unique to the City of Hamilton. It's a problem with municipalities across this great country of Canada. What that Federation of Canadian Municipalities did is they commissioned a report by a professor from McGill University. In that report, his findings were, back in '85, the infrastructure deficit of municipalities across the country was $27 billion. Today, it's $130 billion and growing by $2 billion a year. What has created this situation? Well, part of it is that the federal and provincial government have not made the adjustments, even if you did the cost of living adjustments to what they did fund those programs at, we should be getting significantly more dollars to deal with those issues in the community of Hamilton. We have over 6,600 kilometer miles of roadway, if I got it right, in the city of Hamilton. And what's happened in Hamilton is that we're funding it at around $45 million a year. So we have many roads in very bad shape. And the issue is to get to the life cycle cost of the roads, especially those residential streets, we would have to bring that $45 million up to around $125 million to get to the correct life cycle cost of those roads. So the issue is we're underfunding currently our capital program for roads. The challenge is to increase that so we can get to more roads more frequently. We would have to increase the capital budget, which affects the tax base and affects the levy. To get to the $100 million, just remember this, for every $6.6 million, that's 1%. We would have to raise, almost $55–60 million divided by 6.6. That's the percentage increase in every household to get it where we should be. So the challenge is we don't have the capacity, and the community and the taxpayers do not have the capacity to make the difference, and that's why we hope for the other levels of government to step up to the plate. Now, those are the high-level answers. Now I'm going to get you down to more specific in Upper Horning. I'm going to pass this on to our good guy over here, Gary Moore, which will tell you how the local process works in regards to identifying the priorities of roads. Gary.
Can I say something first? Can I say something? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, as the Councillor said, the $48 million, $48.5 million that we get a year is simply not enough to deal with everything. We do assess all the roads. We do set priorities. Right now, most of the priorities are going to bridges and major arterials. We have come up with neighborhood preservation strategies. We're working with council to come up with funding of those, whether it's through surpluses or through additional government grants that we're looking for. We're coming up on possibly another $8.5 million a year in order to fund that, which would allow us to start to at least attack the neighborhoods and these types of roads. But unfortunately, right now, the reality is we just need the money in order to be able to do it.
So it will be years and years. And the point I'm trying to make, if it costs $5 a household, why can we not pay it and fix it?
Well, I put that the polling question I put on there is whether or not
10, 15, 20.
Yeah, whether the residents would support
fix the road.
Would support additional dollars so that we can get to more of the local residential streets. Upper Horning, by the way, now is this the one where the bus route is actually not only an arterial road, but it's a bus route, which means it would have priority in our system. So I can guarantee, as a result of you raising the question here today and having Gary Moore sitting with us today, I want to make sure that you leave your information with my assistant, either Colleen or Lena over here.
Yes, she knows.
Your contact information. We will dig into it and to determine what kind of time frame, realistic time frame, we can provide you in regards to getting to Upper Horning. I hope that's satisfactory.
That's what I would like to know, more or less.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, Santo. And I want to remind everyone joining us so far this evening, over 3,200 people. If you'd like to ask a live question, you can do so in our virtual town hall by pressing 3 on your phone's keypad and by joining the microphone down at the front of the town hall if you're live at City Hall. Now we're going to go to another question from Boris. Boris, welcome. Please go ahead with your question.
Pick up the phone, I'm on.
Yes, hi, Boris. Please go ahead. You're live on the line on this evening's virtual town hall meeting.
Yeah, okay. I haven't heard anything about Selco. Is it going to be wasted assets forever? Or what's going to happen to the property out there? It's not being used for anything, as far as I know.
Yeah, so I'm going to pass this question on to Michael, if he has the answer in regards to what the current assessment is. We have created a steel committee. We are working with all stakeholders, all MPPs, Steel Caucus, the steel workers, of course, and U.S. Steel. We are trying to determine exactly what the future plans are. We believe that the steel industry is still a viable industry, and we are waiting for the federal government to disclose the agreement that they signed off with U.S. Steel. We're hoping that we can salvage, moving forward, steel being made here in the city of Hamilton. Having said that, the other issues that have been raised by other councillors, if not, we better start understanding what lands could be freed up so that we can provide opportunities for other industries to locate in those locations. Michael will give you the numbers. Thank you.
So thanks, Councillor. The caller raises a good issue. We mentioned previously some of our challenges around assessment. Stelco and the U.S. Steel properties represent a challenge as it relates to assessment and assessment appeals. We'll be presenting to committee tomorrow that in 2013, the U.S. Steel properties assessment declined by approximately 31%, and that represents $2.2 million in tax revenue that the City of Hamilton will not realize in 2014. So while that value seems significant for the average taxpayer, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that that land is still valuable. And so while our revenues are declining by 2.2%, that land continues to have some significant assessment value. And I don't have the number in front of me, but again, in terms of the assessment value, while the facilities are changing in terms of the production is moving away from those lands elsewhere, the City of Hamilton still continues to accrue some benefit in terms of the assessed value of that land. But nonetheless, it does represent a pressure, and in 2014, it's a $2.2 million revenue shortfall.
And just in addition, Chris Murray, the city manager, alluded to the brownfield strategy. Councillor Collins, I believe, was the initiator of that motion before council, which was supported unanimously by council. Obviously, that we have some concerns about that land being underutilized, and we want to optimize the obviously the utilization, tax generation opportunities, and job creation. So that is part of that whole process, and at the end of the day, that's our objective, and we'll be working diligently to try and achieve that objective. So thank you very much for the question. Eric, back to you.
Thank you very much, Boris, for that question. And we're actually going to go to another live question from someone joining us live at City Hall, and it's going to be from Bob. Bob, you're joining us live. Please go ahead.
Good evening. I commend you for your hard work, Mr. Murray and Councilman Mr. Whitehead. I have a few questions. I'm not sure what the rules and regulations are, whether we, go according to legal procedures here or what. However, regarding sidewalk clearance, I had the Bobcat go up and down the sidewalk about 5 times, I think, one Saturday. It didn't clean the sidewalk. It removes some snow, but the base is very, very difficult to move. And especially if you have ice on the sidewalk. No little plow on the sidewalk is going to remove that ice. So it's not simply get a little snow plow going through there. It's going to be fairly complicated, I think. And I think it's going to be more expensive than $35.
Just on that, the plow would eventually have sand or salt on the back, so you're not only getting a plow, but you're getting the sidewalk salted.
Yeah, well, he did, and I fell flat on my face. But anyway, that's another matter. Regarding tax base, could you tell me, compared to other cities in Ontario, say on a $100,000 assessment residential, how does the Hamilton rate compare to, say, Burlington or Ottawa or Windsor?
So that's a great question in terms of our tax competitiveness. We presented to council some weeks ago that the City of Hamilton participates with, I think, just over 80 other municipalities. We report annually in terms of how our taxes compare to those municipalities. In terms of our residential class, we are about average in terms of our comparator groups.
Really?
In terms of property taxes and net levy. So by net levy is how much do we spend in the delivery of our programs and services? We were right in the middle of the pack. In terms of residential, we're towards the middle, just higher than the middle of the pack. The classes that we're challenged with is our industrial, our large industrial, and our standard industrial class. In our standard industrial class, we're about 32% higher than the comparator municipalities, and it's varied over the last 10 years from approximately 1% higher to now about 32% higher. And some of our challenges around industrial, it's a bit of a success story in the sense that the assessed value of those properties has increased. And as those properties' assessed values have increased, so too has their tax burden. The other challenge is the education tax rates for commercial industrial properties in the City of Hamilton have stayed constant, but the province has had some targeted programs for educational tax rates for commercial, industrial, and other communities. So their tax burden, their education tax burden, has declined, and that's put the City of Hamilton in a less competitive position with respect to our commercial and industrial. So coming back to residential, we're about average in terms of the cost of delivering our services and tax burden. Our challenges are more so in terms of our residential and industrial property classes.
Thank you for your succinct answer. Another point, the equalization assessments. I compare my property, which is evaluated about $350,000, compared to our lovely estate in Flamborough at $760,000, and I pay more tax than he does, or she does, or whatever. Are we working on this equalization process? Is that still in continuance?
Very good question. As you know, I've been a strong advocate and champion on the area rating issue. So basically, one of the challenges is that there's many services that don't exist in the outlying area, and so they're getting area rated, so they're not paying for services they don't receive. The problem was that they were receiving services that they weren't paying at the same level as we were. And so we fixed that through the agreement that beginning of the term that was unanimously, very divisive issue, that was unanimously supported by this council. So the area rating issue is resolved. There's one outstanding issue, though, that pertains to the fact that there's still a differential, and that is transit. So certainly in our rural area, we're never going to see transit, so they're never going to pay transit, which is a fairly significant cost on your tax bill. There's certain urban areas of the city that receives, the outlying areas that receive transit, but they're taxed differently than you and I are in the city relative to transit. That issue will be coming up in the next term of council to see if we can get a little more equalization on that formula.
Thank you. And
thank you very much, Bob.
Oh.
Yep, thank you very much, Bob, for that question. We do have another question ready to go, and it's going to be coming from Jerome. Jerome, welcome to this evening's virtual town hall. You're joining us live. Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much. Many years ago, they had the streetcars, which are going to be very similar to the LRT, I understand. What was the reason for getting rid of the original streetcar system, which apparently worked very well? That's the only question I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I'm just looking around this table, and unfortunately, there's no one here that was around when that decision was made. So I have no understanding of why the council that day, or certainly the staff that were around the table that day, may advise or may not advise that the streetcar system be eliminated. I can tell you, though, that there is a differential with the LRT. You're not talking about a single vehicle. You're talking about one vehicle that have a fairly significant capacity to move people with one driver instead of 12 buses with 12 drivers, which obviously costs on an operating side is far greater. So the jury is still out on the LRT in the sense that council did pass a resolution saying they would support it if it was 100% funded and no further taxes to the community. If that formula isn't met, I can tell you, and I'm hearing it from my own residents, that they're not up for spending $200 million or more for LRT, and I'm listening to them very carefully. Thank you.
Jerome, thank you very much for that question. And I actually want to remind people that if you're joining us on our virtual town hall, you can ask a question by pressing 3 on your phone's keypad. If you're joining us in City Hall, you can join us down at the front and ask a live question through the microphone. We do encourage everyone to ask questions. We want to hear from you, and you can ask Councillor Terry Whitehead a question by either pressing 3 on your phone's keypad if you're listening in virtually, or you can join us at the front of the room and ask a question through the microphone. Speaking of which, we're going to go to Daniel, who has a live question. Daniel, welcome. Please go ahead.
Hello,
Daniel.
Hi there.
Please.
I just wanted to ask one quick question. I live on the West Mountain, and my biggest concern with what I see is accountability. And I think it touches on many of the issues that have been raised today, if it's the police services issue, or it hasn't been brought up with the severances given to some of the city managers, HSR services. You mentioned about fixing some of the streets. I'm seeing, downtown, some of the one-way streets being turned to two-way streets, bus lane put on King Street. I'm sure these were put in at significant cost, and yet this gentleman living on Upper Horning, has been waiting, I think, a number of years. I personally wouldn't support $5 extra on my taxes. I think I pay enough property tax already. I think you should be able to, and I appreciate what you said about the shortfall, Mr. Whitehead, but again, so I'm seeing some of these other issues happening, the streets, different things happening with streets, I'm sure happening at a large cost. So my question is about accountability, and how do you think we can bring more accountability into City Hall?
Thank you very much, Dan, for the question. Briefly on the whole transportation piece, I've had several meetings with staff and with Councillor Brian McCaddy, and one of the biggest challenges I see is the narrative for the longest time has been very downtown-centric, and yet the largest populations of the city live outside of downtown. And in fact, in some cases, we're being impacted by the decisions that were being made very local and geographic, or having an impact on many of the residents that lived needed to commute downtown. So one of the things we're embarking on is a master transportation study. And then what I've asked, and I'm working with Councillor McCaddy, and we're looking at creating an independent panel of citizens that would represent the various areas of the city to help inform that process and to ensure that we're not going in with preconceived ideas, but going in with as best information as practical, working with the community, educating, understanding the issues, plugging it into that system. And then that system, that transportation study will come back out, and hopefully when it's concluded, we'll spit out what the overwhelming issues are, the concerns are, where the priorities should be looked at, and how we should progress in order in how to spend money. So clearly one of the arguments I put forward is before you start making congestion downtown, make investment in transit on the mountain. Give options for the residents on the mountain before you start slamming them with 15 more minutes to 30 more minutes a day going to their doctor's appointment in downtown or going to their jobs downtown. So the bus lane is a pilot program. That's what pilots do. You measure it. I can tell you that the responses I've received to date haven't been very positive. I'm not going to judge it until all the stats are in, but that's the nature of pilot programs. On the accountability piece, I'm going to pass it on to the city manager.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and I'm glad you did. It's a great question. And what I say to staff, and this has been the case since I began as city manager a few years ago, as a public servant, we are here every day in everything we do to build a relationship with the people we serve, which is you. And that relationship is founded on two basic things: trust and confidence. Whatever it is that we do, whether it be picking up garbage, plowing streets, mowing lawns, taking care of whatever we do over a counter, whatever we do over a phone, the simple message to staff is that as a public servant, our reward at the end of the day is being able to gain that trust and confidence in our citizens. And so with that, there's been a concerted effort over the last few years to start to really question the culture of City Hall in terms of the administration, and to get people to be more accountable for their actions. And certainly the examples that you raise shake the confidence of any taxpayer when you read about, some of the actions that occur here at City Hall as a result of, what is wrongful decisions of staff. And I mean, that gets communicated. What you don't see is all the other things that we do and do quite well. And so that's one of the things that we are doing, I think, internally more and more, is just to remind our leadership as well as our front line what success looks like. I remind senior management and others leaders in this organization, for me, success is not awards. For me, success is not accolades. For me, success is knowing that our front line each and every day is doing its job and doing it well. That's where success occurs. If I measure it any other way, I don't think it's the right way to go. And to your point, every single general manager has got a performance review that goes on, and that is cascading throughout the entire organization to make sure that all the leadership in our front line can be held accountable for the job they're expected to do. We should be communicating more to you about the good things that we do. Having worked, my background is in planning. My experience has been in public works as well as community services, and I got to tell you, I work with some pretty remarkable people. You never hear about it, unfortunately, and I think that's my responsibility to do more to communicate just how good we are. It's interesting, others outside of this community, in fact across this country, recognize us for a bunch of different things. Everything from asset management, which we're one of the pioneers of understanding infrastructure, understanding the importance of knowing the condition and understanding how to try and fix it. In fact, if you look at the provincial guideline on asset management, we're the ones that are cited in that guideline. There are a bunch of other things that we do in public health, community services throughout our organization that are really quite exemplary. But if all that you're reading and hearing from us is what you read in the paper, I don't blame you for feeling the way you do. But we take very seriously the investment that you make in city services, and we are very clear with management and the front line that we're public servants. I think many of us are proud to be, and that it only takes one mistake to unravel a lot of good work.
I appreciate that. I just want to add on, Dan, that that has been an issue around this horseshoe for a while. The city manager has put processes in place. And the other things that I didn't talk about in regards to accountability is we do have an internal auditor that audits every division on a fairly regular basis, creates a work plan every year. And we also have now, like I indicated before, the Auditor General, which will be looking for value for dollar. So that's another form of accountability. And then certainly changing the culture. And I think that's the challenge the city manager has, is that it's like turning that ship in that harbor. It takes a little while to change the culture that he's adopted when he got hired. But I can tell you that he's doing a great job, and I'm hopeful that in the next number of years, the taxpayers of this community will realize the changes that he's made through the culture shift that he has committed to. And the last piece that I wanted to address in regards to some of those other issues, I firmly believe as a councillor that when we're going to spend the very little capacity we have in regards to capital dollars, we need to ensure that we create a consensus building, but not in one geographic area, not just in Ward 8, but the broader community. And I learned this from a representative from Seattle. You get buy-in on certain principles, and then you move yourself down to how you set those priorities and how those dollars are spent. That's all done through more of a consensus process, and that is involving the broader community, not just one geographic area. And I think far too often, we focus on one geographic area at the expense of everybody else. That's the culture that I'd like to see changed in regards to that accountability as well. So thank you very much for the question. Eric, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. We do have another live question ready to go, but we're going to go to a polling question before we get to it. We want to hear from the audience listening in on the virtual bridge. You can use your touchtone phone to indicate your response. Do you support an enhanced bus service on the mountain? If yes, please press 1. If not, please press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, please press 3. So do you support an enhanced bus service on the mountain? If yes, press 1. If no, press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, please press 3. Now we're going to go to Rob, who has a question. Rob, welcome to the virtual town hall. You are live on the line. Please go ahead with your question, Rob.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, Rob. Please go ahead with your question.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm live. Yeah, we've had a pretty rough winter, and there's been a lot of issues with damaged roads and potholes throughout the city. I live up on the mountain by Limeridge Mall, and I'm just wondering if there's some sort of an action plan in place as to when these potholes and the damaged roads are going to be fixed up, because obviously it's causing a lot of problems with alignment of vehicles and going over the bumps and damages. And secondly, we live in a world where there's so much technology. Why can't we have a system in place where people can text in, where they're seeing these issues, or if there's like maybe a pothole hotline that people can report these types of problems?
I really appreciate the question. I'm just looking over to Joey Coleman, who's been a big proponent for open data and information. Absolutely great point. My understanding is the capability is there now in regards to identifying pothole issues, that it could be emailed to, whether you send it to your ward councillor, or I'm going to pass to Gary Moore to fill you in on the strategy and where that information should go. Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. The city helpline right now will take those reports with regard to potholes, the regular public works line during the office hours. I can tell you're correct with regard to the potholes. Mother Nature has not been kind this year. The number of below sub-zero days and the moisture in the pavement, cracking that pavement and generating those potholes is probably 4 to 5 times what we've normally do in a year. The frost is to depths of 5 to 6 feet, which is another issue with regard to water mains and work we have to do on the roads. The crews are out every day fixing potholes, maximizing the amount of crew time that we have available to fix those. We can do nothing except hope for warmer weather and then reassess in the spring. Given our resources, we'll be maximizing the amount of work that we can do with the resurfacing crews to address it. But short of that, it's an ongoing problem, and a problem that's not just unique here in Hamilton, but I can tell you across the province and across the country right now.
I just want to add, we are making a significant, I wouldn't say necessarily investment, but we're moving and using different tools in social media and Twitter. I know that in the city manager's office. So that's yet another tool that is being monitored, and when issues are being raised, whether it's an accident or pothole issues, my understanding that you can even tweet that. And I don't know if somebody's got an address. Chris?
Actually, we do. Mike Kirkopoulos, our head of communications, is here. So Mike, just there's a number of channels or a number of ways in which you can get information into us. Mike, if you could just identify those ways, that would be appreciated.
Thanks, Chris. In terms of the way to reach the city for potholes and other similar type service requests, I think as folks have mentioned, we have 905-546 City, which is a city line. We also have email, which is askcity@hamilton.ca. And likewise, to your point around texting and or social media, we do have the @City of Hamilton Twitter account. And through that, folks are able to send us information relative to potholes, and we will ensure that those are forwarded and addressed as well.
Thank you very much for the question, and I pass it back to Eric.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. We are going to go to another polling question. So using your touchtone phone, if you're on the virtual town hall, you can answer this question. We want to know, do you feel that Council has focused enough on mountain issues? If yes, please press 1. If not, please press 2. And if you're unsure or undecided, please press 3. So for all the people joining us on the virtual town hall, do you feel that the Council has focused enough on mountain issues? If yes, please press 1. If not, press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, please press 3. Now we have another live question. It's going to be coming from Bob there at City Hall. Bob, welcome to this evening's town hall. Please go ahead.
Good evening. My question is regarding the sale of Stelco to U.S. Steel and the lack of government support federally on imposing the conditions of sale. I'm concerned long-term as a Hamilton citizen of the potential cleanup costs of Hilton Works. From what I understand, there will not be any steel making in Hamilton at Hilton Works. The only lines running will be the galvanized lines and the coke ovens. The rest of it will be brownfield. What are the game plans long-term for the cleanup, and what are the liabilities for the city, for my family, my grandchildren, et cetera, going forward?
Great question. I'm going to take that from two fronts. There's still the issue whether or not the federal government should be abandoning the steel industry sectorally, period. I can tell you that my experience with the federal government, and certainly what I read in Australia currently, if people pick up the paper, you'll see that there's a huge war going on and huge tariffs are being applied to China, who's dumped tons and tons of steel on the shore at the cost, under the cost of producing steel, under their cost to produce steel. And certainly that's put a heavy load on many countries around the world, and countries step up and they charge significant tariffs to try and keep that steel out. In Australia's example, it's affecting Japan because it can't just do it with China. The Americans did the same thing with the dumping of steel on the shorelines, and then when China dumped the steel on our shorelines, the federal government just put their hands up and they put the tribunal together and they didn't add any tariffs, and our steel industry is competing with their hands tied behind their back. We also know that the domestic use of steel in Canada is fairly significant and would justify Hilton Works continue to work in an efficient manner. So it's not a question of whether there's not enough market to produce steel for in Canada. The issue is federal policy. We know that the federal government needs changes on the tribunal. That's one issue, but second piece is they have to ensure that they're not tying the steel industry's hands behind their back when they're competing internationally. And far too long, I believe, not only the steel industry, but there's other sectors, agricultural, forestry, a number of sectors that our federal government has tied their hands behind. And when we look at the G7, we're the least subsidized country in many of those sectors. And yet our people, our employers, our employees are expected to compete against those sectors. So I believe that we still need to make a case that there's still plenty of opportunity to have a sustainable industry at the Hilton Works yard. Losing that, if we lose that battle, and I hope we don't, but if we do, your point on the liability is valid. And that is why we created the brownfield strategy. That's why we're looking and meeting with all the MPPs, and we're working through AMO, we're looking through the Premier's office, and we're working all the way up to the Prime Minister's office to ensure that the necessary changes, and we actually will be working with U.S. Steel as well, the necessary changes in legislation is put in place to ensure that if, in fact, at some point in time, that land is brought back into the city's hands, or there's a possibility of that so that we can either clean it up or market it for other industrial purposes, that liability isn't being transferred to the taxpayer of this community. And that's the significant issues that and concerns we have with most of our brownfields, but certainly with the recent developments at U.S. Steel, the fact that they're not producing steel, the fact that they're underutilizing a significant property, that we need to plan and strategize around that and ensure in that process that the taxpayers are not going to carry that liability. So I thank you for the question. It's not a perfect answer because it's a tough one. It's a very complex issue. I know that we created a Steel Area Committee. We're meeting with MPs, the Steel Caucus, and probably many others. We're meeting with all stakeholders. We're having that very discussion as we speak. So thank you very much for the question. Eric?
All right, thank you very much, Bob, for that question, and thank you very much, panelists and Councillor. We're going to go to another live question. It's coming from Bill, joining us on the virtual town hall. Bill, we still have a few minutes. If you'd like to give us your question quickly, please go ahead.
Yes, my greetings to Mr. Whitehead. I would commend you on this new version of a town meeting. It is a great enhancement on the democratic process. Now to my question. When it comes to the issue of providing fuel for, let's say, the city's electrical and electrical fuel sources, I come up with two possibilities whereby you could dramatically reduce your cost of electric power. First of all, you could use certain vacant lands and possibly tops of buildings for extensive solar power production. Secondly, a lot of the trash that's collected could be used as fuel to turn the turbines provided you had an exceptionally good filtration system. Has your committees looked into these two possible areas to save cost of fuel around the city?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm going to pass you on to the city manager. He will tell you we do have a department with the City of Hamilton that is dedicated to look at green and look at energy efficiency. So, Chris.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor. We do have an energy office in Public Works that looks at all the energy we consume. They help us negotiate good gas prices, as well as they look at ways in which that we can reduce our consumption of energy. But they also look at these, as pointed out, these green approaches to generating energy that can further reduce our costs. For example, in terms of landfills where there is, methane gas that's produced, I mean, we've got means by which we capture the gas, and we're able to utilize that and turn it into energy for ourselves. So that generates some benefits. The other thing, we have a district energy function here in the city that helps to reduce the cost of energy to buildings that are connected to it. Like, for example, I believe City Hall is connected to the district energy network. So that helps to reduce the cost of heating and cooling, certainly, and at City Hall and other buildings in the downtown where we house staff. But you're right. I think in terms of solar, we work with Horizon Energy, and we've talked to them about the possibilities of developing an expanded solar program where you're absolutely right. Buildings, whether we own or other institutions in the community or vacant land, could be contemplated for use. That's been looked at. We have not really gotten to the point where we've seen anything that looks feasible. The truth is that energy costs are only going in one direction, and it's going to be these inventive ways to help offset our costs that we have to explore. But the good news is that we actually have people who more than pay for themselves in giving the organization good advice as to how to reduce our bills and where possible, generate revenue.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Chris. And then one other one was at Innovation Park, Direct Energy, we have a geothermal that's helping facilitate the utility cost in that area. So we're using every tool at our hand, but great suggestion, and certainly something that we will continue having dialogue and looking forward to partners and actually having discussions with Horizons as well. So Eric, I'll pass it back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor, and thank you very much to Bill for that question. Now we're going to go to another polling question, and the people on the virtual town hall can use their phone to indicate their response. And do you think that this virtual town hall method is an effective way to engage the community and residents of Ward 8? If you found this virtual town hall effective, please press 1. If you did not find it effective, please press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, please press 3. So did you find this virtual town hall method an effective way to engage the community and residents of Ward 8? If you did find it effective, please press 1. If you did not find it effective, please press 2. And if you are unsure or undecided, please press 3. Now, it appears we're just about at the top of the hour. I see that there are still a few questions we haven't had time to get to. For the people on the virtual town hall, the way the event has been set up, you can stay on the line once the town hall is completed. You'll have a chance to leave a direct voicemail at the end of the town hall, and the councillor and the panel will have a chance to review any questions or comments you may still have. So once again, stay on the line. Once the town hall is completed, you'll have a chance to leave that voicemail. Now, this has been a historic event. I mean, it was streamed live on the internet. It was on the phone. It was also live in City Hall. Councillor Whitehead, thank you very much for putting on this consultation. I'm going to pass it back to you so you can say a few words in closing.
Well, I want to first thank Joey Coleman, who's taken time out of his busy schedule. He is providing, we can talk about accountability. Joey Coleman has brought some not only transparency but accountability in regards to live streaming and doing a very effective job of all council meetings, not just council meetings, but a lot of the subcommittee meetings and the standing committee. So I want to thank Joey Coleman to take the time out of his schedule to live stream this particular meeting tonight. I want to thank Prime Contact for providing all the technical support to do something that's new and innovative. I mean, who would have thought in all the meetings I've ever had, that you can have over 3,200 people on the line participating and asking questions in town hall meeting, as well as having a live audience listening and participating as well. It's like I said, it's newsworthy. It's the first time that any ward councillor has reached out and utilized technology such as the town hall to engage as many of the citizens as possible. I want to thank those that showed a lot of patience and stayed on the line and listened to the presentations and asked the questions. I want to thank the audience who came down and through a dark and cold night to be here and ask questions and listen to the presentation, because all these questions help inform me make better decisions on your behalf. And before we close, I was just going to ask Dan if we have any results on those polls. Hang on, here we go. I don't have the questions in front of me, so I need the questions. So these are the last. Well, this is question number 1. Do you think virtual town hall method effective way to engage the community and residents in Ward 8? 88% polled said yes. So thank you very much for that, and certainly it's a tool that I know that I'll be sharing with my councillor colleagues. I don't know if we have the results of the other polls. If not, we certainly be posting it on our website. We can't show you on the screen, but I have 2 very, very capable individuals that work in my office. Lena Sadiq, who does a lot of the special programs and help facilitate this meeting tonight, and my chief of staff, what's her name?
You're in trouble.
I'm teasing Colleen tonight because she's a trooper. She's been part of the cornerstone of the office. She responds to almost every constituency inquiry. And so thank you very much again, Colleen, for all you do on behalf of the residents of Ward 8. And so any more information will be posted on my website. Any further questions could be and will be forwarded, or you can call my office at 905-546-27911. Or sorry, 2779. Thank you very much for everyone participating. Have a good evening.
Thank you again to everyone for joining us on this very special Ward 8 virtual town hall budget consultation. We are live this evening with Ward 8 City Councillor Terry Whitehead, and over 3,500 people have joined us this evening, and we're also live with a few panelists. And have a good evening, everyone.